In today's modern world of technology, audio recording has never been easier. All you need to do is click a button, but every now and then, a recording surfaces that feels raw, the kind that lingers, the kind that refuses to be ignored. These are three unsettling audio recordings which didn't fade into thin air, but rather they had disturbing stories behind them. In the Sierra Mountains in California, there's a campground which has been lying there since the 1950s. It lies on a 4,000-foot elevation gain. The fastest way to get to the campsite was by horseback, and in the late months of 1971, Ron Moorhead, a researcher and believer in Bigfoot, was camping in the Sierra Mountains with his friend named Al Berry. Al was a skeptic looking for a hoax. They were camping here to obtain and seek evidence of Bigfoot's existence. The campsite was located near the Lake Tahoe in Yosemite National Park area. They went about their business. They dumped out their supplies and lit a fire in the fire pit. They were planning to stay here for a few days. On their first day, Ron, Al, and their team were all getting along, being relaxed, and living a life for hours. But when dusk turned to night, something approached the campsite. It sounded like it was banging on wood or rocks. They all became frightened and scrambled back to their shelter, and when they were in the tent, they claimed that footsteps and eerie vocalizations were echoing through the campsite, which sounded like high-pitched whoops. And occasionally, they could hear a high-pitched, bird-like whistle. This apparently went on for an hour and a half before dying down, and the men were able to fall asleep. The next morning, they left the camp as quickly as possible, but Ron so desperately wanted to know what was in the woods that night. So they returned after a while, and once the sun fell, the noises started again. They heard a whoop in the distance, and another responding whoop. The men were now perplexed, and eventually fascinated, as they realized the sounds were likely not from ordinary animals or human hunters. Al Berry and Ron Moorhead decided to record what they were hearing. They used a reel-to-reel deck, and at times imitated the calls, communicating back and forth with the unknown source. They got over 80 hours of audio over several trips.
We're in for a night, Bill. That's our job.
In this audio, you can clearly hear banging, yelling, as well as eerie whoops. These whoops aren't believed to have come from any known animals. The rest of the recording is unnerving, because at times, you can hear what sounds like mimicry or imitation of human language.
There's two of them across the creek at the big rocks. It's a hard act to follow.
The audio recordings were later brought to Dr. R. Lynn Curlin afterwards, and he analyzed it for a while and confirmed that the recordings are 100% authentic. They haven't been tampered with in any way. They have not been sped up, slowed down, pitch corrected, or altered at all. The analysis also determined that the creature in these audio recordings was way bigger than a man, likely between 7'3" and 8 feet tall, based on pitch and sound. They discovered the vocalizations do not belong to any known animals, let alone any humans, because the vocal range was drastically higher and lower than that of a person's. It has also been revealed that the tape was not pre-recorded or re-recorded in any way. Many people believe that the source behind these recordings is an unknown primate creature, possibly a Sasquatch. After this recording surfaced, some speculated that if it was Bigfoot, that it's possible that Bigfoot can mimic human languages. Many people have determined that the words spoken sound like a mix of Chinese and Japanese languages. Now, I barely understand Japanese, so I have no idea what words the creatures are mimicking. Some argue that the unknown source in these recordings were just misidentified animals, like bears or coyotes. And others speculate that these recordings were just an elaborate hoax. But these theories don't seem that likely, because as discussed before, these recordings are not believed to have come from any known animals, nor any humans. Also, as stated before, these recordings were deemed authentic, and would have been nearly impossible to fake in the 1970s. To this day, this recording still holds up as arguably the most indisputable recording of Bigfoot of all time. There have been many attempts to debunk this recording, but it's still holding up strong 55 years later. Apollo 10 was the fourth human spaceflight in the United States Apollo program, and the second one to orbit the moon. On May 18, 1969, Apollo 10 launched successfully. When the spacecraft reached lunar orbit, an astronaut named John Young was still in the command and service model, while two other astronauts were flying within 14.4 kilometers of the moon's orbit. This point would make it easier to descend down into the moon and begin a moon landing mission. At that point, that's when they started to hear an odd noise. It sounded like whistling and almost like music. At first, they were confused, but they didn't think too much of it. But the noise persisted, and in the audio recording, you could hear one of the astronauts saying, "You hear that? That whistling sound?" and described it as outer space type music. They were making jokes and talking about it casually. One astronaut thought nobody would believe them, and they started to consider reporting it to Mission Control, though the sound was recorded on onboard tape, which was declassified by NASA in 2008.
Hey, when do we fire the helium tanks?
Not yet, babe.
Yeah. You want some more brownies?
No.
First of the day, a little hungry.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound?
Yeah. Woo!
Wait, yeah, it sounds like, outer space type music. Hey, Tom, is your insulation all burned off here on the front side of your window over here? Right?
Yeah.
Mine's all burned off. Heading out here, where are you, John?
Just from the audio recording, you can hear that they are super perplexed. This audio recording is unnerving because not only were they completely cut off from Earth when they heard this, but the mix of eerie sound effects with no signs of life makes this all the more mysterious and a feeling of supernaturalness. However, this noise was most likely caused by interference between the VHF radios of the lunar model and the command model. But some people still debate this theory, and some people still think the noise was caused by something extraterrestrial. It's November 3rd, 1980. A 911 operator receives a call from a woman named Ruth Price, who, shortly after making the call, got into a life-threatening situation. In the call, she identifies herself as Ruth Price and informs the operator that she has been seeing a man prowling around her property. As the call continued, something terrifying and completely unexpected happened.
This is Ruth Price at 3877.
What's the problem, ma'am?
Oh, well, there's some guy been checking the place out.
How?
Well, he went in the back. I have an apartment in the back, and he said he was looking for a guy. And he comes to my door, and,
Yes.
and said he's looking for an apartment. So I live alone, and I'm an old lady.
Mm-hmm. Where is he now, ma'am?
I don't have no idea.
In the call, you can hear that Ruth starts to give her address before being cut off by the dispatcher. Then she says a man has been surrounding her property. Then she addresses herself as an old lady. And finally, she lets out a gut-wrenching scream while saying something about not being able to breathe. Some people thought this call was just a hoax or a dummy call for 911 training. But her name was revealed to be Ruth Price, and that the call was in fact real. Unfortunately, the theory that Ruth was murdered on the call when she screamed was the most common theory. There was not much information about her until recently. Ruth Mildred Starr Price was born on December 7, 1913, in Pueblo, Colorado. Ruth's obituary was found, which concluded she died in 1994. So luckily, she didn't die on the call. She fought off her attacker and lived for another 14 years. She was 66 at the time of the call and died at 80 years old. It was not a hoax, and it was not a 911 training call. It was a real call, and that horrible scream of terror was real. But it's relieving to know that this story had a much happier ending than people originally thought. You know, some of these have explanations, some don't, but all of them remind us how much we still don't understand. Which one terrified you the most? Personally, I think the scariest one in my opinion is either the Sarah sounds or Ruth's 911 calls. Keep in mind, Ron, Al, and their team were by themselves when they heard those noises, and the uncanniness of those whooping sounds is undeniable. And Ruth's calls are disturbing because it shows how real human fear is often more disturbing than the unexplained. If you want to see more videos like this, just go ahead and subscribe to this channel. It motivates me to create more content. And leave a like on this video if you think I did a good job making this video. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.